Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Governor Cooper proclaimed February 2023 as Black History Month. Black History Month honors the culture, history, and achievement of Black Americans in the United States for their many contributions to American society. Our guest speaker will be Dorothy L. Guthrie, librarian, author, and founder curator of the AfricanAmerican Museum of History and Culture at Luray Mill. She will explain the blessing of knowing our past and viewing history and education as fertile soil and the good seed, respectively, to produce excellence. Before we go further into today's program, I would like to do some housekeeping. As always, keep your microphones on mute throughout the entire session. Please send all of your questions to the chat room. The chat room will be monitored, and we will work to make sure all of your questions are answered in an orderly fashion. This session will be recorded, and you will be able to view this program later on demand. Speaking of on-demand recordings, you will be notified of today's program's availability and all of our recent programs when they are ready to be viewed. We are pleased to announce the following upcoming programs. Irish American Heritage Month. There will be 2 sessions, February the 28th and March the 3rd, and Women's History Month on March the 7th. We look forward to seeing you there. I have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker. Dorothy L. Guthrie is a librarian, author, and founder and curator of the African American Museum of History and Culture at Luray Mill. She has worked for North Carolina's Gaston County Schools and Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, and for the Clover School District in South Carolina. Mrs. Guthrie is a member of the American Library Association, the Coretta Scott King Book Awards Committee, the National Publicity Committee to promote the Coretta Scott King Book Awards, and is an associate minister at Tabernacle Baptist Church, co-chair of Golden Years Seniors Ministry, along with her husband, Bobby Guthrie, and a former spiritual counsel for the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. Mrs. Guthrie is the author of Integrating African American Literature in the Library and Classroom. She served as an executive board member on the Black Caucus America Library Association, or the BCALA, and co-chaired the 2017 National Black Librarians Conference. She has received numerous awards and honors, including the 2021 Coretta Scott King Virginia Hamilton Lifetime Achievement Award, the UNCF Dreamkeeper Award, the Martin Luther King Unity Award, the Omega Psi Phi Basilisk Award, the 2020 North Carolina Board Award, the Crystal Apple Time Warner National Teacher of the Year Award. She is a member of the Gaston Regional Chamber and is serving a 3rd term on the Gaston County Board of Education. Mrs. Guthrie received a Bachelor of Arts in History and a Master of Education in Education Media from Winthrop University, and attended South Carolina State University and UNC Charlotte University. She and her husband have 1 son, and I am going to turn the program over to Mrs. Guthrie today, and we're excited to have her here. So I'm going to take a moment here to get everything ready for Mrs. Guthrie coming to present to us today.
Thank you, Ms.
Get ready to pull up your program. Okay, your presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Wills, and good afternoon to everyone that's listening today. It is indeed an honor for me to be here to represent the African American Museum of History and Culture at Luray Mill, as well as to celebrate Black History Month. I know that our board members here at the museum are very proud to know that we are represented from the state or at the state level. Now, as a little country girl growing up in Clover, South Carolina, I didn't know anything about life until my neighbor actually drove me to South Carolina State College in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And I tell you that I did not know that much about my history because the books that we were using in the Clover School District at that time were the old readers, Dick, Jane, Sally, Tim, Puff. And sometimes when we wanted to read about Puff or Spot, pages were torn off, out, or bubble gum kept the pages stuck together. We didn't have much of a library, so I did not know anything about my culture until I arrived on the campus of South Carolina State University, and my counselor was the associate professor in the School of Library Science there. Her name was Rossie B. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell introduced me to my culture by introducing me to Russell Adams' book, Great Negroes Past and Present. That's when I fell in love with African American literature. That's when I made the connection. And from that time till this current time, I have been in love with African American literature, with the authors, with the illustrators, and I have felt compelled to make certain that other children were not denied that opportunity. So, to make a long story short, after becoming a member of the Coretta Scott King Book Awards Committee and meeting authors and illustrators across the world, our globe, that really poured their hearts and souls into the text and illustrations that they place in books that are published. Oftentimes, those books are not getting into the hands of our readers. And that is where I knew we had to make that difference. So each year as the associate professor, as the associate minister at Tabernacle Baptist Church, I was responsible for doing the Black History program because I'm a librarian. And I would bring in visitors from the community because it takes that village to raise a child, you know, that old African proverb. So we would do that. And one year, 2018, the idea struck, why not add a little mini museum to the Black History program and just see whether or not families are interested in learning and knowing more about their history. So the pastor said yes, and along with some friends, we pulled together a wonderful little mini museum, which we offered in the Family Life Center. And it was evident that our community, our families were all ready to see and learn more about African American history. Next slide, please. So we decided that in that length of time, which was only a weekend, it was important to explore, examine, engage, and encourage our community to learn more about African American history and culture. So now that was a little mini museum. Let me tell you how we got to where we are today. Well, my husband loves sports. And when he's watching a ball game, that's where his mind is. So one evening I said to him while he was watching his ball game, Bobby, let's not go on vacation this summer. Let's use the money that we would spend on a vacation to find a building so that we can open an African American museum. And he said, okay. Well, he didn't know what he was agreeing to, but I did. And with that, right away, I began to look for a location where we could actually open a museum full-time. Bobby had already retired from the school district as an administrator, and I was willing to work a little while longer just so that if we had to use our money for a long period of time, we would be able to do that in order to get this museum open and on its way. So we found this beautiful, beautiful facility, Lorry Mill, and we rented 1,400 square feet. And here we are today, and we will be here until 2025. And next slide, please. What we discovered when we moved, next slide, please. What we discovered when we actually did open the museum was that we had to make the museum appealing to every age group. Even the youngest child needed to know that he or she had a little history that they could be very proud of. They could color in the pages. So we began to use some donations from friends that saw what we were doing and knew that we were determined to continue. We took those donations and we found resources that would be applicable to what we wanted to see happen. So we found this wonderful little online subscription to Because of Them We Can. And here you see the illustrations are children. That means that even the youngest child will be able to pick up a coloring page and say, oh, this looks like me, or I think maybe I want to color this page. It's about cookies when mommy can read to the child the Tuskegee Airmen or Coruscant King or famous Amos and his cookies or Charles Drew. So many things are out there, but they were not being used. So we have a portion of the museum in this document that you're looking at right now. It looks just like the window. We call this windows of learning. And when our children come through and they sit on the little stool in front of the windows, parents may pull the little flyers out and read to the children about those famous men and women. Next slide, please. Oh my, we talk about the museum because we're so proud of the museum. The museum is divided into 8 zones, and zone 1 covers Gastonia. What we discovered in the zone 1 under the Gastonia history is the fact that Nathaniel Barber went to the bank to borrow some money, and he was asked, what type of collateral do you have? Hey, I'm here to borrow money. I have none. So when he was denied the opportunity to borrow a few dollars just to support his mother and younger siblings, he decided, all right, if you cannot allow me to borrow from you, I am going to pull the voices together in the Gaston community to see if we can empower ourselves. So that's what Nathaniel Barber did. He pulled men together who were all willing to move forward, to get and own cars, or to own homes, or to make repairs, or to send a child to college. These men and women in 1942 opened the Excelsior Credit Union. You can see 3 buildings in the slide. The first one where the old cars sitting, it was the first building. The second, the white block, and the third one before it was torn down due to the progress, they say, was there. But Nathaniel Barber, who's featured in this slide, was the financial secretary, and the first African American elected to the Gastonia City Council. In the slide that you're looking at now, we do know that from the national perspective, we've heard about scientists, we've heard about inventors, but if you don't ever search out local history, I'm afraid that you're going to lose a lot of very important history. You see, we have a gentleman who is on our right, to your right rather, and he was a very influential African American that lived in Gaston County in Gastonia, whose name was Ernest Farr. Well, Ian Matchlinger invented the shoe lasting machine, a machine that would attach the top part of the shoe to the sole of the shoe. Yes, I knew about him, but I had no idea that right here in Gastonia, Ernest Farr also invented shoes. He invented shoes for orthopedic children. But unless we share that with our children, they'll never know. So when we look at our children and we want them to use their higher order thinking skills, we ask them to compare as well as contrast the difference between the two inventors, and they can do that. We have lesson plans for the children to use when we present this slide, the one that you're currently looking at. Let's go to the next one, please. Oh, long time ago, Gastonia needed a doctor. The only way that Black folk who were ill were treated was when the white doctors left their offices or when they had finished with their last patient during the day, and Blacks would sit on the side and wait to go in for the doctors to treat. So Gaston County realized the importance of needing its own Black doctor. So Dr. Herbert Irvin Sr. became the first Black doctor in Gaston County. Not only was he the first Black doctor in Gaston County, but he was the founder of the Gastonia Negro Hospital, as well as he was an avid Negro League baseball fan. He loved baseball. But let me tell you a little bit about the hospital. Later on, Dr. Williston became a doctor here in Gastonia, and he moved into the old Negro Hospital. And right before Christmas, Dr. Wilson's family offered that building to the museum, but unfortunately, it's located in an area that we would feel like we wouldn't be able to get the traffic that we get here in our current location. So we had to gracefully say thank you, and we still appreciate your support greatly. So let's move to the next slide and see if we can't see. There it is, Dr. Thomas Harold Williston. I am in the center there, holding a medical bag that's over 90 years old. One of our board colleagues is there looking through the medication in that bag. I have the bag on the table where I am right now. This is intriguing, viewers. It is intriguing because our young people need to know, first of all, about science, the careers and education, all of those things. We are inclusive here in this museum when it comes to career development, when it comes to applying their trips to the museum based on the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. What we did, we have educators that looked at the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, and I, for one, being that I am on the school board and a librarian that's charged to write curriculum, we took the North Carolina standards and we embedded those standards into the 8 zones that you will find in this museum. So when teachers ask their administrators if they can arrange a field trip to the African American Museum, the justification, the documentation will be there for them to come, and learning will not be interrupted at all. As a matter of fact, it will be enhanced. So thank you, Dr. Wilson, for your contribution to the African American Museum of History and Culture at Laurel Mill, as well as to the state of North Carolina. Next slide, please. All right, so we've heard of Madam C.J. Walker, but did young people here in Gaston County ever know that there was a Madam Charlotte Laurie Means who did just like Madam C.J. Walker? She invented her own hairdressing. Well, if they didn't know then, they know now. Because Madam Charlotte Laurie invented her own hairdressing. She actually did distribute her hairdressing. And I have a little container, just as you see there. I wanted to place it next to Madam C.J. Walker's so that you can see it doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is what you do with what you have. And when we see our children walk through the door of the African American Museum, if they enter with a fixed mindset, we hope that after they journey through the 8 zones, they will be able to leave with a growth mindset. Hey, I read about Madam C.J. Walker, but you know what? Until I visited the museum today, right here in Gaston County, I had no idea that Madam Charlotte Laurie Means invented her own hairdressing as well. Next slide, please. In this slide, I wanted to just do a few things. You have given me, and I am so honored to have the opportunity to talk about the museum. We have so much history. We have so many people who have made major contributions to history. Last week, last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, the African American Museum saw 240 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in the museum. We are a small museum, but we have a landlord with a huge heart. So we were able to occupy some empty space. And when I asked the young people if they liked Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, the hands went up. And when I told them that Steve Henson had invented the Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, they were amazed. They were amazed because they had no idea. We want that connection to be made. And you know how I made that connection? We ordered packets of Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, and we allowed our young people to walk away with a little piece of history. Yes, he was a Nebraska cowboy. And later on, he and his wife rented and bought an old rundown ranch. And it was a dude ranch. The word dude was interesting young people stopped to pay attention, and they began to manufacture their own dressing. They liked that too. And then we stopped and we told them about the potato chip. Many of them got that because many elementary teachers will talk about George Crumb and the Saratoga chip and tell the story about the Saratoga chip. Many of them will know about the traffic light, the gas mask invented by Garrett Morgan. And when you tell them, as well as, and this is what I wanted them to see, and I want not just our young people to see, we can study math by taking the box that Henry Box Brown was. He shipped himself from slavery in Virginia to freedom in Philadelphia, in the dimensions of the box, and how long he was there, for 27 hours. This is intriguing to our young people. We must make history interesting to them. We must help them to understand that there is a fantastic group of people that walked before us, and they're pushing them forward now so that they will make a difference and an impact as they journey along. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorites, North Carolina. This is one of my favorites because Gwendolyn Harrison Smith was born in Bessemer City, North Carolina. And Gwendolyn Harrison Smith was a very smart young lady. She had many master's degrees and applied for acceptance at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So when she submitted her application, she was accepted. You know why she was accepted? Because at that time, they were not asking for a photo on the application. So when Miss Smith arrived in Chapel Hill, she was denied the opportunity at first to attend because of the color of her skin. But what we tell our children as they journey through the museum, perseverance is very important. We want you to know that. So Miss Smith said, I received a letter stating that I had been accepted. I am going to expect you to make good on that word in the letter, or else there will be a lawsuit. To avoid the lawsuit, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill allowed her to attend. Now, if you're ever near that Gwendolyn area, there's a beautiful building there in Chapel Hill called the Gwendolyn. And it's there because of what Gwendolyn Harrison Smith did and what she did not do, which was to give up and go back to Bessemer City. So this is what we're saying to our children. When they come through that door, if they come through the door with that fixed mindset, by the time they leave, we hope that they would have developed a growth mindset. Gwendolyn Harrison Smith. Next slide, please. Oh my, this is one of my favorites. And let me tell you why. Because Ransom Hunter is believed to have been the first freed slave to own land in Gaston County. As well, Ransom Hunter was a businessman, an entrepreneur. He loved education. And if you will look closely at the slide, you will see that, hey, how could a Black man just free from slavery have a house or live in a house that looks so modern during that period. And to my right at the bottom, that's a school that he founded because he believed that children should be educated. This is not hearsay. I am speaking to you from facts. Because last July, I was honored to be able to participate with Ransom Hunter's family at his gravesite there in Mount Holly, where they placed a beautiful bench in memory of his service to mankind, as well as to the town of Mount Holly. Let me tell you something else. In Mount Holly, where the city of Mount Holly is now, that land once belonged to Ransom Hunter. He sold that land to the town of Mount Holly. I was very fortunate to do an ESPN segment with Brandon Bellamy, the owner of the Gastonia Honey Hunters baseball team. And we did the segment here in the museum where we talked about Brandon Bellamy's determination to own his own baseball team, as well as Ransom Hunter's determination to be a successful businessman who would pay it forward. Next slide, please. Oh, here we are. This one is going to cause everyone across the county of Gaston to assemble together the week of April 18th through the 23rd. And we are going to pay special recognition and in memory of the Tuskegee Airmen that graduated from Holland High School, attended Morehouse College, Marshall Cabinets. We are proclaiming Marshall Cabinets Day in Gaston County. There will be a parade. There will be an opening ceremony, and we're inviting the state officials to be a part of that. We will have a parade. We will have food trucks, and all week long, well, I didn't tell you this. It's a national exhibit, and the exhibit will arrive on the 17th and open to the public on the 18th. The mobile itself will seat between 30 and 40 children or adults. They will enter the mobile, watch 2 little video clips, and once they leave, one side of the mobile opens up as an exhibit. So it will be Tuskegee Airmen exhibit. This is what we have done. We are in partnership with Gaston County Schools. We will prepare the children for their visit to the Tuskegee Airmen exhibit. The Tuskegee Airmen exhibit provided us with lesson plans. Teachers will have ready-made lesson plans so that the children themselves will be excited to know that there was a Tuskegee Airman that lived right in Gaston County. But if we don't prepare them, they will be just going through the motions. The whole purpose for the African American Museum is to feed our children, to give them the information that the great erudite Mary McLeod Bethune talked about in her last will and testament. We must leave a legacy of love, determination for our children. And that's what this museum is all about. It's that textbook that the children won't get from the State Department or vendors. It's what they will get from oral history. It's what they will get from an oral tradition, the storytelling. They'll get that, and they'll have memories. Just like I'm excited about the AfricanAmerican Museum each and every time I talk about it. I just hope that it will accomplish that for which it was created. Next slide, please. And you know what? We work with various groups in the community. Well, when COVID came, we opened, let me tell you this, let me back up a little bit, backtrack. The museum first opened its doors February 16th, 2019. We had to close our doors on March 16, 2020. I tell you, and I say this with the greatest of pride, from February 16 until the time that we closed our doors, we had seen over 4,000 people. This is not to brag about the numbers. It's just to say that there was, as Mary McLeod Bethune mentioned, a thirst for learning. And families, churches, schools, sororities, and fraternities all played a vital part. The Omega Psi Phi fraternity did their Achievement Week in the museum. The Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity did their Founders Day program at the museum. The Delta Sigma Theta did the Afrocentric fashion show. We reach out, and of course the AKAs always make great contributions because they bring their little pearls in, and we're just so proud of them. We open our doors on Saturday to Zeta Phi Beta, just so that they will see what we have in order to help us to promote the education of our young people. We do have a student advisory council. We feel that it's important to have a student advisory council because this council can appeal to their age group, and it consists of high school students. And believe me, we are doing just that. Next slide, please. Well, what would our history be without sharing additional cultural perspectives? In Belmont, North Carolina, each year, they do a Juneteenth celebration. Well, what's the role of the African-American Museum? On our Facebook page, then we ought to promote the Juneteenth holiday, as well as the culture, as well as the books that are relative or refer to Juneteenth, so that our children will learn more about Miss Oprah Lee and why she was called the grandmother of Juneteenth. And what is Juneteenth? These children may be enjoying the popcorn, the hot dog, and the sodas, ice cream, without ever understanding Juneteenth. It's up to us to share that with our children, especially since this is a holiday that takes place during the summer, and teachers won't get the opportunity to do that. So it's up to us to share with summer enrichment camps or to sponsor programs of our own. And I am doing a Facebook Live Juneteenth program in this photo. Next slide, please. Okay. I mentioned our Student Advisory Council. We have some smart young people. You know what they're doing? This was a live video as well, but I want to just tell you about it. Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is a very special cultural period between December 26th and January 1st that it isn't really celebrated that much in Gaston County. Let me just say in Gaston County, because I can only speak for Gaston County. But what we're doing, we are making our Gaston County residents more cognizant of the essentials that are part of our culture. So we ask our young people again to be the speakers to motivate their age group about Kwanzaa. And that's what they are doing here. And they had there were 7 of them. After they introduced, they wrote their own little script. And we were very proud of what they were able to do this year with their little Kwanzaa script. It's important. Dr. Martin Luther King said it best. You can't be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. And I cannot be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. It's interrelated. And this is what we're trying to do through the museum. Next slide, please. We partner with Belmont Abbey, with Clover School District. We've done some work with Dr. Burns at App, picking up the Green Book exhibit from the North Carolina African American Commission. And she came down, picked it up, took it to App, shared our brochures. And we have Jacqueline Shelton Green. We brought her down during April Poetry Month. And Dr. Mary Stratton, who is the Dean of Education, is the person that's going to do an informal interview so that all will hear about Jacqueline Shelton Green and what we want to do through poetry. That's a wonderful way to express yourself. Next slide, please. And we, again, not only did I have the opportunity to introduce Toni Morrison's book at the American Library Association conference when her book won CSK Honor Award, but we had Maddie Temple Tatum Lathan, who wrote about the one world and the color of one world. And long time ago, if we working together, that's the most important thing that we have going for us. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, it's what you do with your gifts and your talents as we work together to build a better world. Next slide, please. I love this slide because it features Warren Logan, the sculptor, Jim Biggers, the artist, and of course, my husband, Bobby Guthrie, co-founder of the African-American Museum. You see them discussing the importance of African-American history and culture in the little mini museum that we created at Tabernacle Baptist Church. Next, please. This is another one that's important. We have Black schools, Black high schools that we need to always involve. We need to pull those folk into whatever we're doing because their neighborhoods are affected by the museum and how we share our history and culture and how those Black schools then were so influential within a city. We have the Black schools represented. We've asked each school that existed before integration to come to record their alma maters. They're singing the alma maters, and we play those periodically throughout the museum so that if we have visitors coming in, they can say, oh, well, that's from my old school. I remember that. It's important to make certain that we don't neglect any part of our history. We want to be able to include every group, every age level, every culture, so that everyone will benefit from the African American Museum of History and Culture at Laurie Mill. Final slide, please. And just to make it happen, we have 6 trunks that will circulate. We have a social emotional learning trunk that circulates, an arts, ARTS trunk that circulates, a Coretta Scott King Book Awards trunk that circulates, an elementary trunk that circulates, a middle school trunk that circulates, a high school trunk that circulates. And you see my team writing, embedding the curriculum, using resources from the museum to make sure that we are using our state standards. Below you see a historic quilt. We have that quilt and we have the learning guide to that quilt. So every photo that's pictured on that quilt, there's a learning guide to accompany the quilt. The quilt may be borrowed as well. Any of these resources may be borrowed. As a matter of fact, we are very busy right now with schools wanting to borrow the resources that we have. And one final thing that I will say, which I'm very proud of, it won't be a Schomburg library, but we're going to start our own African American Linden Library. And we are partnering again with Gaston County Schools. Once we have created our database, it will be placed on their school's database as well through their Follett catalog. So if a teacher is looking for a resource that may not be in their school library, they can check the African American Museum's library, Linden Library, to see if the book or the resource is there. So that's what I have for you today, and I certainly hope that it's been informative.
It has been more than informative, Mrs. Guthrie. I've thoroughly enjoyed your program that you've presented today. And I do have a couple of questions. We're going to start the, we're going to go ahead and start the question and answer segment for today. So if you would go ahead and submit some of your questions to the chat, we're going to go ahead and get started with some of the questions that I already have had submitted. And question number 1, what are you all doing to get as many young people involved in Black history as possible? And you may have touched on some of this earlier, but if you could kind of summarize what you're doing to get as many young people involved in Black history, please.
Well, we get to promote our museum through the school district. And of course, we promote it through Belmont Abbey as well. So as I stated, to have had that many young people last week, we just let the teachers know, let the principals know that we are doing Black history programs and that they may schedule to bring their young people. And as a matter of fact, we're saying we can't take any more this month. We can't take any more because the schools have already booked and they are coming. And it's just on our Facebook page, we're just letting them know what we do here, and they want their children to be a part of it. Did that answer the person's question? Or did you need strategies? Yes. Or whatever?
Yes, that answered the question. I also have another question about your museum's hours. Are you open every day or is it during the week? Could you tell us a little more about your hours?
Yes, I will, gladly. Right now, well, when we first started, we were open 5 days a week, but after COVID, our volunteers, and we are really, we're here, we're using volunteers only. So we are open on Tuesdays and Fridays from 11 o'clock to 4 p.m. However, if there is an out-of-town group that would like to come at any other time, I will open and do the tour for that group.
Excellent, excellent. So you also, it sounds like you do tours for special groups, and that's great. I do have another question about your outreach programs that you use. And you do say that you utilize social media. Do you partner with other current African Americans or other entrepreneurs to provide presentations?
Oh, yes. This month, in addition to having the honor to present here, I am doing the Cramerton Historic Society. I am doing two business African American programs because of the diversity that's involved in the workplace. I am doing, as a minister, I'm doing a Sunday morning message. I am also doing a community program as well. So yes, I partner. I'm a very strong partner within the community. That's important. And we're celebrating our 4th anniversary this weekend. It's important to partner, and we're working with Gaston County and we're working with the city of Gastonia as well. We partner with everyone because it takes that partnership in order to be successful.
Yes, and the feedback I'm getting from everyone is that your programs are just very engaging and awesome to look at, and everyone is loving the story that you are telling. How are you educating the meaning of Juneteenth to young people? You talked a little bit about it, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do with your Facebook Live, for example?
Yes, what we have, we always try to take a little story, a little Juneteenth story, and we try to, first off, not try, we read the book and then we do like a little book talk or a little activity. If there are no little suggested activities, we create our own. Then we sit down with the children and we talk about Juneteenth. We talk about what is Juneteenth. We talk about what are some things that you have happened to you that should have been told to you earlier. You know, we talk about the lateness of folk in Galveston, Texas, learning that, you know, they had been, the enslaved learned that they had been freed long time ago. And Miss Oprah Lee's book, that one book that I used last year, is the best one to use because she tells the story. And you know what? The inclusivity is there. She has a group of children around her. She didn't say they were of any special color. It was there. The illustrator did that for you. And you just let children walk away with a good feeling knowing that being together, working together brings success together.
Okay, the next question that I have, and that's a great answer. Do you have a good amount of adults coming in, and what are they saying to you about the museum?
Well, you know, I have a crying section in the a sobbing section. Let me just say that. In one of our sections, we have, it's called Nostalgia, and it's for our seniors. Now, I'm telling you, we don't just serve Gastonia. We serve Charlotte Mecklenburg. Richland County has been to see us since we're open after COVID. They plan their lunch. They'll find a place. And by the way, if you plan to visit the museum, there are some very nice places that you would want to consider having lunch, whether it's African American, etc. So we have this area where you remember the good old days. We talk about the tin tubs where we would sit in front of an old wood stove where it would turn cherry red and your legs would get brown in front and you'd be cold in the back. And we talk about the chamber slop jar because some call it the chamber pot, some call it the slop jar. We talked about the old cast iron stove. We talked about the spring in the well. All of that's here. They're precious memories. And some sob. Now, you know, like I was a cotton picking girl and all that was not precious because I wanted to go to school. But again, you know, we have it here in the at the museum. So that's something for everyone. There's something for everyone. Remember, this is a textbook that's can be enjoyed by all. And I know you may not be able to see all of this, but I have four of my favorite musicians that are supporting this program because it's North Carolina today. Nina Simone, Max Roach, Thelonious Smart, John Coltrane. They are North Carolinians that our young people need to know about.
Yes, and I would like to say as well that you were talking about how you serve the counties that you serve. I would like to correct you and say you serve the entire state of North Carolina, not just the area that you were talking about, because this museum is awesome, and I plan on taking my family to visit when I come to the Charlotte Mecklenburg area because it's not far. Gastonia is not far away. I do have another question. Do you find that the youth are mostly surprised when they are educated about their history? If so, do you ask for some form of commitment, albeit light from them to continue the legacy of educating people about their young people about their history?
That's why our student advisor to me is so important. It's critical that we first share with them. And I'm going to give you an example. The Tuskegee Airmen will be coming, but our Student Advisory Council were not familiar with what, and these are smart kids and they're in high school. So we must be that textbook for them so that they will know exactly what to say to their peers. And we charge them to go out and bring one back so that they will know, as well as our greater community. And we have these young people that represent in each of the schools because we don't want half of Gaston County to know what we're doing. We want all of Gaston County to know what we're doing. And we're even working with, like tomorrow, I have a meeting with the Sheriff's Department, with the county's security system to talk about the Tuskegee Airmen so that they will know how to provide the security, because this mobile can't be moved once it's brought to Gaston County until it's ready to get back on the road. But working in partnership with Gaston County and other agencies in Gaston County, now that they see what we're doing, we are getting the support. And I want to thank our North Carolina legislators for their support of this African American Museum.
And we want to thank you again for having the idea of getting this museum together. I have to have one final question for you. When would be the best time to visit the museum?
You tell me the best time for your visit, and I will make certain that the museum is open for you, and I will do the personal visit, tour.
We get a
I
tour.
am flexible. I am flexible.
Well, I've gotten a lot of questions, and I do have a question as well. How can we contact you about getting to come to the museum? And also, how do we contact you to help, like to donate or to find out how we can support the museum?
Okay, will you write in the chat? Can you do that? Or
Yes, I can do it right now.
Okay, it's African American Gaston at gmail.com.
And what I will do as well with this email address is I'll make sure that I get this information out. But when I send out the information for the on-demand part of everything, I will also send out this email address as well.
That's perfect. And donations, we have a donation button there too, if you go to the website. If you go to the African American Museum, just Google African American Museum of History and Culture, you'll find us, and we have a little donation button there too.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to present your museum to us. And I just want to say that we've gotten a lot of feedback about your presentation. It was very informative, and I'm excited about the museum, and hopefully I'll be able to bring my family to visit very soon. But we would like to again thank you for coming to present today, and on behalf of the state of North Carolina and the Office of State Human Resources, again, we would just like to thank you for coming and presenting today. And hopefully you will be able to have your exhibit with the Tuskegee Airmen, and that will definitely be something that's very successful. And again, continued success with the museum. And I would just like to encourage everyone again to celebrate Black history, not only during the month of February, but throughout the year. And we're going to make sure that this program is posted on our site as soon as possible so that you can view the program in its entirety. And again, thank you for attending today's event. And Mrs. Guthrie, again, thank you for presenting today and telling us about our history and how we take our history and that fertile soil and produce the rich produce that's to come in the future. Thank you so much. And have a good day.
Thank you very much. You too. Thank you.